At the family party, I found my daughter's head shaved. My wife's sister laughed. It's just a joke. I slapped her and walked out behind me. My wife's mother cursed useless and bastard husband. But the next morning, her mom came begging, please give your wife's sister a way to live. Listen, let me paint you a picture of domestic bliss, American style. My name's Marcus Hale, I'm 36 years old, and I've mastered the fine art of being professionally invisible at family gatherings. You know the type. I'm the guy who perfected this smile and nod technique while internally calculating how many beers it'll take to survive another evening with my in-laws. My wife Clara, bless her optimistic heart, had this brilliant idea that we should attend her mother's annual family feast. Now, when Clara says family feast, what she really means is let's watch Marcus get roasted harder than the beef while pretending everything's peachy keen. But here's the thing. I'm a sucker for free food and an even bigger sucker for my 9-year-old daughter Sophie's happiness. This kid had been planning her outfit for this shindig like she was going to the Met Gala. She'd spend hours that afternoon braiding her beautiful brown hair into these intricate patterns that honestly put my college engineering projects to shame. The concentration on her face as she worked those braids in the mirror was pure determination, tongue sticking out slightly, eyes laser-focused like she was defusing a bomb instead of creating a masterpiece on her head. "Daddy, how do I look?" she'd asked, spinning around in her favorite purple dress, those braids swinging like silk ribbons. And man, if that didn't just melt whatever was left of my cynical heart into a puddle of dad goo right there on the bathroom floor. "You look like a princess, sweetheart," I told her, and I meant every word. She beamed at me with that gap-toothed grin that could power half the eastern seaboard, and just like that, I was committed to this family torture session. Now, Clara's family gatherings are like a carefully choreographed disaster. Picture this. You've got about 25 relatives crammed into Gloria's living room, which she decorated sometime during the Carter administration and hasn't updated since. The carpet's this hideous green shag that looks like AstroTurf had a baby with a chia pet, and the wallpaper screams, "I peaked in 1987. But the real entertainment isn't the decor. It's watching everyone try to out-humble brag each other while stuffing their faces with Gloria's famous dry as the Sahara roast beef. I knew walking into this thing that trouble was brewing like a perfect storm of family dysfunction. See, there's this unspoken tradition at these gatherings. It's basically a competition to see who can deliver the first passive-aggressive insult to yours truly while maintaining that fake smile that says, "I'm not being mean, I'm just being honest." Last year's winner was Cousin Janet, who managed to work in a comment about my interesting career choices before we'd even finished saying grace. This year, I had my money on my sister-in-law Tessa. Oh, Tessa, where do I even start with this piece of work? Imagine if Cruella de Vil had a baby with a social media influencer, and that baby grew up watching too many reality TV shows. That's Tessa in a nutshell. She's got this way of walking into a room like she owns the place, even though everyone knows she's been living in her parents' basement since her last business venture went belly up. But does that stop her from acting like she's the queen of the universe? Hell no. She struts around with her phone permanently attached to her hand, ready to document every moment of her fabulous life for her 17 followers on TikTok. The evening kicked off exactly like I expected. Uncle Tony was holding court by the appetizer table, bragging about his new pickup truck like he'd personally invented the internal combustion engine. "It's 22 miles per gallon," he announced to anyone within earshot, as if this was some kind of miraculous achievement worthy of a Nobel Prize. Cousin Rick was going on and on about his promotion at the insurance company, describing his new cubicle like it was a corner office on Wall Street. And don't even get me started on Aunt Rita's detailed medical update about her cholesterol levels. Apparently, she's down to 180, which is apparently cause for celebration and a 15-minute monologue. Me? I did what I do best. I grabbed a beer from the cooler, positioned myself strategically near the shrimp cocktail, and activated my patented, politely interested facial expression. It's this look I've perfected over years of practice. Just engaged enough that people think you're listening, but vacant enough that you can mentally plan your escape route or compose grocery lists in your head. Tonight's mental grocery list was particularly riveting. We needed milk, bread, more beer, and probably some industrial-strength antacid after this meal. The shrimp cocktail, I'll give Gloria credit, was actually decent. Sure, It was probably the frozen stuff from Costco, but she'd arranged it on this fancy glass platter that made it look almost classy. I was working my way through my third shrimp when I started calculating the optimal time to make my move toward the dessert table. See, Gloria might not know how to season a roast beef, but the woman could bake. Her chocolate cake was legendary in the family, and I'd learned from previous gatherings that if you didn't stake your claim early, you'd be left with the weird jello thing that nobody could quite identify. Sophie was in her element, running around with her cousins like a pack of sugar-fueled wolves. Their laughter echoed through the house, and honestly, it was the best sound in the whole place. Way better than Uncle Tony's truck specifications or Aunt Rita's medical updates. Clara was doing her thing, playing the perfect daughter-in-law, making sure everyone's drinks were topped off and nodding enthusiastically at Gloria's stories about her book club drama. But I could feel it building, that familiar tension that always preceded disaster at these family gatherings. It was like that feeling you get right before a thunderstorm, when the air gets all thick and electric and you know something's about to go sideways. Tessa kept shooting me these looks across the room, like she was sizing me up for something. She had that predatory smile going, the one that meant she was cooking up some kind of scheme in that twisted brain of hers. Little did I know that in about an hour, my quiet evening of free food and forced small talk was about to turn into something that would make Jerry Springer look like a PBS documentary. But for now, I was content to stand there with my beer, watching my daughter's braids bounce as she chased her cousins around, completely oblivious to the fact that Tessa was about to turn our lives upside down. You know that moment when you're at a party and suddenly realize the background noise has changed? Like, one minute you've got this symphony of chaos. Kids screaming, adults laughing, Uncle Tony explaining the finer points of truck maintenance to anyone unfortunate enough to make eye contact. And then suddenly it's like someone hit the mute button on half the soundtrack. Yeah, that's exactly what happened about an hour into Gloria's feast of family dysfunction. The kids had been tearing through the house like a pack of caffeinated gremlins, which was totally normal. Sophie and her cousins. There's Jake Jr., who's 7 and thinks he's a ninja, little Emma, who's 5 and basically a tiny tornado in pigtails, and Marcus Jr. Yeah, they named him after me, which is either flattering or a cruel joke, depending on your perspective. They'd been racing up and down the stairs, playing some elaborate game that involved a lot of shrieking and what sounded like furniture being rearranged. But then, nothing. Dead silence from upstairs. Now, under normal circumstances, when kids go quiet, that's usually when you should start worrying. It's like that old parenting rule. Loud kids are happy kids. Quiet kids are probably setting something on fire or giving the cat a makeover with permanent markers. But honestly, I figured they'd just crashed in front of a TV somewhere or found Gloria's stash of ancient board games in the closet. Kids have this magical ability to disappear into quiet activities when they hit that sugar crash point, you know? Meanwhile, downstairs in the land of adults pretending to be civilized, Tessa was putting on quite the show. And by show, I mean she was strutting around Gloria's living room like she was walking the red carpet at some discount awards ceremony. The woman had this new phone, one of those massive ones that looks like a small tablet, and she kept waving it around like it was Excalibur or something equally impressive. "Oh my God, you guys, look at this camera quality," she announced to the room, holding the phone up like she was about to take a group selfie with the Pope. "The video is like professional grade. I could literally start my own production company with this thing." Right, because that's exactly what the world needs. Tessa with professional grade video capabilities. But the real kicker was the purse. Holy shit, this purse. She had it positioned on Gloria's coffee table like it was some kind of museum exhibit, constantly adjusting its angle so everyone could get a good look at the label. Except here's the thing, and I swear I'm not making this up. The label literally said Gussie. Not Gucci. Gussie. Like someone at the knockoff factory had one job and decided to phone it in harder than a government worker on Friday afternoon. I kept waiting for someone else to notice, but apparently, I was the only one blessed with functioning eyeballs at this shindig. Everyone else was just nodding along like Tessa had just unveiled the crown jewels instead of what was obviously a sidewalk special from some guy named Chun who operates out of a van in Chinatown. That's when Aunt Rita sidled up to me with that conspiratorial whisper that women of a certain age have perfected. You know the one. It's technically a whisper, but somehow everyone within a 15-foot radius can hear every juicy detail. "Marcus, honey, she whispered, glancing around like she was about to reveal state secrets. Did you hear about Tessa's little work situation? Work situation? I asked, genuinely curious because as far as I knew, Tessa's relationship with employment was about as stable as a house of cards in a hurricane. Rita leaned in closer, and I caught a whiff of her signature perfume, something that smelled like flowers died in it, and were having regrets. Well, apparently she was working at that marketing firm downtown, right? You know, the one with the fancy glass building that looks like a giant's ice cube. I nodded, taking a sip of my beer and settling in for what was clearly going to be some premium family gossip. So word is, Rita continued, her eyes practically sparkling with the joy of spreading drama. She got caught borrowing company funds. And when I say borrowing, I mean she was using the company credit card to buy herself Botox gift cards. Can you believe that? Botox gift cards. Who even knew that was a thing? Now that was interesting. I mean, it explained a lot about Tessa's recent facial expressions, or lack thereof. The woman hadn't been able to properly frown in months, which I'd attributed to her generally sunny disposition. Turns out it was just good old-fashioned medical intervention. So she got fired? I asked, trying to keep the amusement out of my voice. Fired? Honey, she's lucky they didn't press charges. Apparently, she told HR that the Botox was a professional development expense because it would make her more confident in client meetings. Can you imagine? I couldn't help myself. Well, at least she invested in herself, I said, loud enough for a few nearby relatives to hear. It's kind of like insider trading, but uglier. Uncle Tony nearly choked on his beer, and even Clara cracked a smile from across the room. Sometimes my timing is just perfect. But as the laughter died down and the conversation moved on to safer topics like the weather and whatever was happening on that reality show everyone pretends not to watch, I started feeling this weird itch in the back of my brain. You know that feeling when something's just off? Like when you're driving and you can't shake the feeling that you forgot to turn off the stove, even though you know damn well you didn't even cook anything that morning. That's what was happening. The house was too quiet upstairs. Sure, kids crash sometimes, but this was different. This was the kind of quiet that makes parents start mentally preparing for disaster. I glanced around the room, doing a quick head count of the adults, and everyone was accounted for except, where the hell was Tessa? I looked around again, more carefully this time. Uncle Tony was by the fireplace, still talking about his truck's fuel efficiency to anyone who'd listen. Cousin Rick was deep in conversation with Gloria about some work drama that seemed to involve a lot of hand gestures and dramatic sighs. Aunt Rita had moved on to corner Clara's cousin Beth, probably spreading more gossip about someone else's professional failures. But no Tessa. And now that I thought about it, when was the last time I'd heard Sophie's voice in the mix of kid chaos upstairs? I walked over to Clara, who was refilling the chip bowl with the focused concentration of someone trying to avoid getting pulled into Uncle Tony's truck monologue. Hey babe, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. When's the last time you saw Sophie? Clara looked up, brushing a strand of hair out of her face. Oh, she's fine, Marcus. She went upstairs with the other kids like an hour ago. You know how they get when they're playing. Probably building a fort or something. Yeah, but they've been really quiet up there. Usually, when kids get that quiet. Relax, Clara interrupted, giving me that look that wives perfect after years of marriage. The one that says, you're being paranoid and slightly annoying. She's fine. They're probably just tired. It's been a long day. Spoiler alert, she was not fine. Not even close. But I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that my parental spidey sense was tingling harder than a smoke detector with a dying battery. And somewhere upstairs, in the weird silence of Gloria's house, my daughter was about to have the worst day of her 9-year-old life. You know that feeling when you're watching a horror movie and the protagonist is about to open the door that every sane person in the audience is screaming at them not to open? Yeah. Well, turns out I was starring in my own personal nightmare, and I was too stupid to recognize the soundtrack. My dad instincts were going off like a car alarm in a hailstorm, so I decided to trust my gut and venture upstairs to check on the kids. The wooden steps creaked under my feet like they were narrating my impending doom, each groan echoing through Gloria's house with all the subtlety of a foghorn. The second-floor hallway was eerily quiet. No giggling, no footsteps, no sounds of furniture being used as jungle gyms. Just this heavy, oppressive silence that made the hair on my arms stand up like I'd been rubbed with a balloon. I checked the guest bedroom first, empty. The linen closet where the kids sometimes liked to build forts. Nothing but Gloria's collection of moth-eaten towels and sheets that smelled like they'd been marinating in mothballs since the Reagan administration. Jake Jr.'s usual hiding spot under the desk in Gloria's home office, nada. It was like someone had activated some kind of kid-vanishing device. But then I heard it. This soft, muffled sound coming from the bathroom at the end of the hall. It took my brain a second to process what I was hearing, but when it clicked, my stomach dropped faster than my credit score after Christmas shopping. It was sobbing, quiet, heartbroken, the kind of crying that makes every parental nerve in your body go into red alert mode. I approached that bathroom door like I was defusing a bomb, my hand hovering over the handle for what felt like an eternity. Part of me wanted to turn around, go back downstairs, and pretend I hadn't heard anything. Maybe grab another beer and join Uncle Tony's riveting discussion about tire pressure. But the sound of my daughter's tears was like a magnetic force pulling me forward. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. Holy shit. I've seen some messed up stuff in my 36 years on this planet. I've witnessed Uncle Tony try to karaoke my way at 3 different family weddings. I've seen Clara attempt to install a ceiling fan with nothing but YouTube tutorials and misplaced confidence. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, had prepared me for the scene that greeted me in Gloria's avocado green bathroom. Sophie was standing in front of the mirror, and I swear to God, for a split second, I didn't even recognize my own kid. Those beautiful braids that she'd spent hours perfecting, the ones that had swung around her shoulders like silk ribbons when she'd shown me her outfit, they were gone. Completely, utterly, devastatingly gone. Her head was shaved cleaner than a cue ball, leaving behind this pale, vulnerable scalp that looked like it had never seen daylight. Hair was everywhere. Brown strands littered the white tile floor like confetti from the world's most depressing party. It was stuck to the sink, draped over the towel rack, even some pieces floating in the toilet bowl like some kind of sick art installation. The bathroom looked like a crime scene. If the crime was destroying a 9-year-old's self-esteem and possibly her faith in humanity. But here's the real kicker, the absolute cherry on top of this nightmare Sunday. Standing behind Sophie with a pair of electric clippers in her hand was Tessa, grinning like a hyena who'd just discovered a wounded gazelle. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part was the phone. Her precious new phone with its professional-grade video quality was propped up against the medicine cabinet, recording the whole goddamn thing. Sophie was crying, not the dramatic, attention-seeking tears that kids sometimes deploy when they don't get their way at Target. These were the deep, soul-crushing sobs of a child whose world had just been turned upside down by someone she was supposed to trust. She was clutching her head with both hands like she was trying to hold herself together, her shoulders shaking with each ragged breath. "Daddy," she whispered when she saw me in the doorway, and that one word contained more pain than should be legally allowed in a child's voice. My blood pressure skyrocketed so fast I probably could have powered a small aircraft. I felt this rage building in my chest like lava in a volcano, starting deep in my gut and spreading outward until every cell in my body was vibrating with barely contained fury. I've never been a violent guy. Hell, I apologize to furniture when I bump into it. But standing there looking at my daughter's devastated face, I understood for the first time in my life what people mean when they talk about seeing red. Tessa, apparently oblivious to the fact that she'd just crossed a line so far over that it wasn't even visible anymore, had the audacity to speak first. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Marcus," she said, waving those clippers around like they were a magic wand instead of the instrument of destruction they'd just become. "It's just hair. It'll grow back. Besides, now she won't waste so much time brushing it every morning. I'm practically doing you guys a favor." A favor? She called destroying my daughter's beautiful hair. The hair Sophie had been growing out for 2 years. The hair she'd spent the entire afternoon braiding with the concentration of a Swiss watchmaker. A favor. "It's just a joke," she added, that hyena grin getting wider as she gestured toward the phone. "Everyone's going to love this. Sophie's going to be TikTok famous." That's when I noticed she was still recording. Still. Fucking. Recording. My daughter's trauma was being broadcast live for Tessa's 17 followers, like this was some kind of entertainment instead of child abuse with a side of social media narcissism. "Look, Sophie," Tessa continued, apparently under the delusion that she was some kind of motivational speaker. "Now you look edgy. Like that girl from that alien movie. What's her name? Ripley. You look tough. Sophie just cried harder, and I swear I could hear something snap inside my skull. Not physically snap. I'm not having a stroke or anything. But mentally, emotionally, some fundamental part of my give a damn just broke clean in half. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I didn't consider the consequences or weigh my options or count to 10 like all those anger management articles suggest. I just reacted. I slapped her, right across her Botoxed face, hard enough that the sound echoed off the bathroom tiles like a gunshot. It was loud enough to silence whatever conversation was happening downstairs, loud enough that I'm pretty sure the neighbors 3 houses down heard it. And you know what? It felt fantastic. Top 3 most satisfying sounds of my entire life. Right behind the pop of opening a cold beer on a hot day and Sophie's first laugh as a baby. My hand stung. Tessa's face went from smug to shocked faster than a politician changes positions during election season. And for one perfect moment, justice felt served. You know how in action movies, after the hero delivers some epic justice, there's always that moment of perfect silence where everything feels frozen in time? Yeah, well, real life doesn't work like that. Real life is more like a hand grenade with a really short fuse, and I just pulled the pin in Gloria's upstairs bathroom. The slap echoed through the house like the crack of doom, and suddenly every conversation downstairs stopped mid-sentence. I could practically hear Uncle Tony's beer can pausing halfway to his lips, 25 relatives suddenly wondering what the hell had just happened on the second floor of their precious family gathering. But I didn't have time to worry about the audience downstairs because I had more pressing matters to attend to. Like my daughter, who was standing there looking like she'd survived a nuclear explosion, and my psychotic sister-in-law, who was holding her cheek and staring at me like I'd just slapped the Queen of England instead of a child abusing wannabe influencer. I scooped Sophie up in my arms like she was made of the most precious material on earth. Which, let's be honest, she was. She wrapped her little arms around my neck and buried her face in my shoulder, her body still shaking with those heartbroken sobs that were tearing my soul into confetti. Her head felt so small and vulnerable without all that beautiful hair, and I had to fight back my own tears as I held her close. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered into her ear, trying to channel every ounce of dad strength I had left. "We're going home. Right now." That's when Tessa found her voice again. And let me tell you, the woman had apparently majored in victimology with a minor in selective memory loss. "He hit me," she shrieked, pointing at me like I was some kind of war criminal instead of a father who'd just witnessed his child being traumatized. "Marcus hit me. Everyone, he hit me." She started following us down the hallway, her voice getting higher and more hysterical with each step. "I can't believe you hit me. Over hair. It's just hair. It's going to grow back." I turned around so fast that she almost ran into me. "Just hair," I said, my voice coming out lower and more dangerous than I'd ever heard it before. "Lady, you just gave my 9-year-old daughter a trauma that's going to require therapy, and you're calling it just hair?" But Tessa was on a roll now, apparently having convinced herself that she was the victim in this scenario. "You're insane." I was trying to help. She looked so ordinary before. Now she's got character. Character. She called shaving my kid bald without permission character. I was about to explain to her exactly what kind of character assassination I was planning for her social media accounts when we reached the top of the stairs and all hell broke loose downstairs. Picture this. 25 adults who had been enjoying a perfectly nice evening of passive-aggressive family bonding suddenly trying to process the sound of domestic violence from the second floor, followed by a sobbing child and increasingly hysterical shouting. It was like someone had thrown a live grenade into a church potluck. I started down those stairs carrying Sophie like I was a soldier extracting precious cargo from a war zone, which honestly wasn't that far from the truth. Behind me, Tessa was still wailing about being assaulted, but her tune changed real quick when she saw the faces waiting for us at the bottom of the stairs. Gloria, my dear, sweet mother-in-law who had all the warmth and charm of a rattlesnake with hemorrhoids, came rushing toward us like she was about to save the day. But when she got a good look at Sophie's shaved head, her face went through more expressions than a mime having a seizure. What happened to her hair?" Gloria stammered, reaching out towards Sophie like she wanted to touch her head and confirm that yes, her granddaughter was indeed bald as a cue ball. "Your psychotic daughter happened," I said, shifting Sophie's weight so I could get a better grip. Your precious Tessa decided to open up a barbershop in your bathroom. That's when Gloria's maternal instincts kicked in. Unfortunately, they kicked in the wrong damn direction. "You hit my daughter," she screeched, pointing at me with a finger that was shaking with righteous indignation. "You useless bastard husband. Always causing drama at family gatherings. Useless bastard husband. Nice. Real classy, Gloria. Drama," I repeated, my voice dripping with more sarcasm than a teenager asked to clean their room. "Lady, your daughter just ran an unlicensed barbershop out of your bathroom while filming my kid's breakdown for her TikTok account. If anyone's causing drama here, it's Cruella de Vil with a cosmetology license." The relatives were starting to gather around now, forming this weird semicircle like they were watching a really messed up episode of Jerry Springer. Cousin Jake was standing there with a breadstick hanging out of his mouth, apparently having forgotten to chew when the entertainment started. Aunt Rita had her hand over her heart, like she was having some kind of vapors. Uncle Tony was holding his beer, like it might provide some kind of moral support. "She ruined dinner," Gloria continued, because apparently her evening of dry roast beef was more important than her granddaughter's psychological well-being. "This whole family gathering is ruined because you can't control your temper." Oh, that was rich. Really rich coming from a woman whose idea of conflict resolution was screaming louder than everyone else in the room. "You're absolutely right, Gloria," I said, my voice getting calmer as hers got more hysterical, which seemed to freak everyone out even more. "I totally ruined dinner. Next time I'll just let Tessa scalp my kid while I carve the turkey. Maybe she can live stream the whole thing for her followers. Really bring the family together, you know?" Uncle Tony made this weird snorting sound that might have been suppressed laughter, but he covered it up by taking a long drink of his beer. At least someone in this family had a functioning sense of humor. But Gloria was just getting warmed up. "If you can't handle a little family fun." "Family fun," I interrupted, and Sophie lifted her head from my shoulder to look at her grandmother with those big, tear-filled eyes. "Gloria, look at your granddaughter. Really look at her. Does she look like she's having fun?" For just a second, Gloria's expression softened as she took in Sophie's devastated face and her completely shaved head. For just a second, I thought maybe some basic human decency was going to kick in and she'd realize how completely screwed up this whole situation was. But then Tessa came down the stairs behind us, still holding her cheek and playing the victim card like she was going for an Oscar. "Mom, he attacked me," she whined. "I was just trying to help Sophie look more modern." And just like that, Gloria's momentary glimpse of sanity evaporated faster than beer at a frat party. Sometimes in life, you reach a moment where everything crystallizes with perfect, beautiful clarity. Like when you're standing in line at the DMV and suddenly realize that the person arguing with the clerk about their expired registration is the same idiot who cut you off in traffic that morning, and the universe just makes sense for a hot second. That's exactly what happened as I stood in Gloria's living room, holding my traumatized daughter while surrounded by a family that seemed more concerned about hurt feelings than child welfare. The decision hit me like a freight train made of common sense. We were getting the hell out of this nut house, and we were doing it right now. I shifted Sophie in my arms and started moving toward the front hallway where we'd left our coats. The whole room was watching me like I was some kind of dangerous animal that might bolt at any second, which, let's be honest, wasn't entirely inaccurate. I could feel their eyes following my every move, probably wondering if I was about to flip another table or slap someone else. The anticipation was almost comical. "Marcus, wait." Clara's voice cut through the tension like a butter knife through concrete. Not very effectively, but with a lot of effort. She was standing by the fireplace, her hands twisted together like she was trying to wring water from her own anxiety. Let's talk about this. Maybe we can work something out." Work something out? What exactly was there to work out? Her sister had just committed what was basically assault with a pair of hair clippers, filmed it for posterity, and the family matriarch was acting like I was the problem because I dared to react like a normal human being. I stopped and turned to look at my wife, really look at her. Clara's face was this perfect picture of conflict, like she was being torn in half by invisible forces. On one side, she had her husband and daughter, traumatized and ready to bail on this whole toxic situation. On the other side, she had her mother and sister, the family she'd grown up trying to please, the people who'd trained her from birth to keep the peace at any cost. And you know what? I felt bad for her. I really did. Being caught between your family of origin and your chosen family is like being asked to pick your favorite kidney. They're both important, but you can only live with one of them missing. But here's the thing about moments of clarity. They don't wait for everyone else to catch up. Pick a side, Clara, I said, trying to keep my voice gentle but firm. It's barbershop horror over there, or your husband and daughter. But you need to choose right now, because we're leaving. The silence that followed was so thick you could have served it at dinner instead of Gloria's cardboard roast beef. Clara's mouth opened and closed like a fish trying to figure out how to breathe on land. Her eyes darted between me and Sophie, then over to Gloria and Tessa, then back to us again. I don't. Marcus, can't we just? She stammered, and I could see her brain trying to find some magical solution that would make everyone happy and fix everything without anyone having to face consequences for their actions. But I was fresh out of patience for magical thinking. Nope, I said, adjusting Sophie's weight in my arms. She'd stopped crying, but she was clinging to me like I was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly turned liquid. We're done here. I didn't wait for Clara to finish her sentence. I walked to the coat closet and grabbed Sophie's little purple jacket, the one that matched her dress, the dress she'd picked out specially for this disaster of a family gathering. As I helped her put it on, I could feel the room holding its breath behind me. That's when Gloria decided to play her trump card, the nuclear option that mothers-in-law have been deploying since the dawn of time. If you walk out that door, Marcus Hale, she announced with all the dramatic flair of a soap opera villain revealing that she's actually her own evil twin. Don't you ever come back. You hear me? You're not welcome in this house. I stopped. I actually stopped and turned around to look at this woman. This person who'd just threatened to ban me from her home because I'd objected to someone assaulting my daughter. Gloria was standing there with her arms crossed, her chin lifted like she'd just delivered some devastating ultimatum that would bring me to my knees. The room was dead silent. Uncle Tony had his beer can frozen halfway to his lips. Cousin Rick looked like he was watching a tennis match where someone had just served a grenade. Even Tessa had stopped her dramatic victim routine long enough to see how this was going to play out. And you know what I did? I smiled. Not a fake smile, not a polite smile, but a genuine, from the bottom of my soul smile that probably looked slightly unhinged. Promise? I asked. The single word hit the room like a bomb going off in a library. Uncle Tony actually choked on his beer this time, spraying it across Gloria's coffee table and her precious fake Gussie purse. Aunt Rita let out this little snort that she tried to cover with her hand, but failed spectacularly. Even some of the quieter relatives, the ones who usually just sat in corners and tried not to get involved in family drama, were fighting back grins. Gloria's face went through about 17 different colors, settling somewhere between purple and the shade of a ripe eggplant. Her mouth opened and closed several times, but apparently, she was having some technical difficulties with her vocal cords. I didn't give her time to recover. I scooped up Sophie's little purse, the one shaped like a ladybug that she'd insisted on bringing even though it was too small to hold anything useful, and headed for the front door. Come on, sweetheart, I said to Sophie, who was watching this whole scene unfold with the wide-eyed fascination of someone witnessing a particularly spectacular car crash. Let's go home. As I reached for the door handle, I heard Clara behind me, finally finding her voice. Marcus, wait. I turned around one more time. Clara was standing there looking like she'd just been asked to solve calculus while juggling flaming bowling balls. The poor woman was so torn between family loyalty and basic human decency that she looked physically painful. You coming with us? I asked, and I meant it. Despite everything, despite her family being certifiably insane, I still loved my wife. But I wasn't going to stand there and watch my daughter get traumatized while Clara tried to figure out how to make everyone happy. Clara looked at me, then at Sophie's bald head, then back at her mother and sister. I could see the exact moment when she realized that some bridges aren't worth keeping intact. Yeah, she said quietly, grabbing her purse from the side table. Yeah, I'm coming. And that's when I delivered my exit line, the one I'd been saving up without even knowing it. Fantastic, I said, opening the front door and letting the cool evening air wash over us like freedom itself. Then I turned back to Gloria one last time. Thanks for the lovely evening. Next time you want to host a family gathering, maybe invest in some security cameras for the bathrooms. You know, to protect the kids from the adults. And with that, I walked out into the night, carrying my bald daughter and my guilt-ridden wife, slamming the door behind us with all the satisfaction of a man who'd just won a battle he never wanted to fight. You know what's beautiful about a good night's sleep? It has this magical ability to reset your perspective on life, like hitting the refresh button on your browser when it's been running too long and everything's getting glitchy. I woke up that next morning feeling like I'd just won the lottery, the Super Bowl, and a philosophical argument with a telemarketer all at the same time. The sun was streaming through our bedroom windows. The coffee maker was doing its thing downstairs, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to mentally prepare myself for whatever fresh hell my in-laws might unleash on my day. It was Saturday, which meant pancakes and cartoons with Sophie, assuming she was feeling up to it after yesterday's barbershop massacre. Clara was still sleeping, probably dreaming about family therapists and witness protection programs. The poor woman had tossed and turned half the night, muttering things like, "I can't believe she did that," and "Mom's going to kill me," in her sleep. I was downstairs in my pajamas, standing at the kitchen counter with my first cup of coffee, mentally planning out our day of recovery and maybe some therapeutic retail therapy for Sophie, when the doorbell rang. 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning. 7 in the morning on a weekend. Now, I don't know about you, but in my experience, nothing good ever happens when someone shows up at your door before 8 a.m. on a Saturday. It's either Jehovah's Witnesses who've gotten their scheduling confused, or someone's having a legitimate emergency. Given the events of the previous evening, I was really hoping for the Jehovah's Witnesses. I shuffled to the front door in my slippers, coffee mug in hand, and peered through the peephole. And there she was, standing on my front porch like some kind of suburban nightmare. Gloria, looking like she'd been hit by a truck driven by regret and shame. Her usually perfect helmet of hairspray was slightly askew. Her makeup looked like it had been applied by someone having a mild seizure, and she was clutching what appeared to be a shopping bag like it contained the Hope Diamond. For a split second, I considered pretending we weren't home, just standing there, holding my breath until she gave up and shuffled back to whatever rock she'd crawled out from under. But then I remembered that my car was sitting right there in the driveway, and Gloria had approximately the same detective skills as a bloodhound on espresso. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged, because I'm paranoid, not stupid, and peered out at her through the crack. Well, I said, taking a deliberately slow sip of my coffee. Look what the cat dragged in. And it's not even 8 o'clock yet. Did you get lost on your way to ruin someone else's day? Gloria's face went through this interesting color progression, like a mood ring having an existential crisis. She cleared her throat and put on what I can only describe as her penitent mother-in-law face, an expression I'd never seen before and hoped never to see again. "Marcus," she began, her voice dripping with more fake sincerity than a politician's campaign ad. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I asked, not making any move to remove the chain lock. "Because I seem to remember you telling me last night that I wasn't welcome in your house. Something about never coming back. Ring any bells?" She shifted from foot to foot like a kid who needed to use the bathroom, but was too embarrassed to ask. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I may have overreacted last night. May have overreacted. Like Hurricane Katrina, may have gotten a little breezy." "Oh, you think?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "You mean banning me from your house because I objected to your daughter assaulting my kid might have been a tiny bit of an overreaction?" Shocking revelation there, Gloria. Really groundbreaking stuff. That's when she held up the shopping bag like she was presenting evidence in court. "I brought something for Sophie," she said, shaking the bag slightly. "To make up for what happened." Curiosity got the better of me, so I closed the door, undid the chain lock, and opened it properly. Gloria immediately tried to step inside, but I blocked the doorway with my body. Some habits die hard. "What's in the bag, Gloria?" I asked. She reached inside and pulled out what can only be described as the most tragic-looking wig in the history of synthetic hair. It was this weird brownish color that didn't match Sophie's natural hair tone even remotely. Think chocolate milk mixed with sadness, and it looked like it had been styled by someone who'd only heard descriptions of human hair secondhand. "It's for Sophie," Gloria said, holding it up like she was presenting the crown jewels. "Until her hair grows back. I got it at that costume shop downtown. The lady said it was their most popular children's wig." I stared at this thing, this sad, lifeless collection of plastic fibers that looked like it had been harvested from a discount Barbie doll. and felt my coffee getting cold in my hand. "Gloria," I said slowly, "are you seriously standing on my porch at 7 in the morning, trying to bribe me with a Halloween wig?" "It's not a bribe," she protested, though her voice had that defensive edge that people get when they know they're full of shit. "It's a peace offering, a way to help Sophie feel better about what happened." "What happened?" I repeated, letting the words hang in the air like a bad smell. "You mean when your daughter committed assault with a hair clipper while filming it for social media? That what happened?" Gloria's face crumpled slightly, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered my daughter's tears, and the feeling passed quicker than gas station sushi through your digestive system. "Please, Marcus," she said, and I could hear genuine desperation creeping into her voice. Tessa needs forgiveness. She needs a way to move forward from this. She's my daughter, and I know she made a mistake, but—" "A mistake," I interrupted, setting my coffee mug down on the little table by the door so I could properly gesture with both hands. "Gloria, a mistake is putting salt in your coffee instead of sugar. A mistake is forgetting to record your favorite TV show. What Tessa did was deliberate, calculated child abuse with a social media component. That's not a mistake, that's a crime." She clutched the wig tighter, like it was a life preserver, and she was drowning in a sea of consequences. "But she's family, Marcus. Family forgives family. That's how it works." "You know what?" I said, leaning against the doorframe and crossing my arms. "You're absolutely right about family forgiving family. The problem is, the moment Tessa put those clippers to my daughter's head, she stopped being family. She became a stranger who hurt my kid. And I don't forgive strangers who hurt my kid." Gloria's shoulders sagged like someone had let the air out of her. She looked down at the wig in her hands, then back up at me with this expression that was equal parts desperate and defeated. "What do you want me to do?" she asked quietly. I pretended to think about it for a moment, taking another sip of my now lukewarm coffee. "Well, for starters, you could try apologizing to Sophie instead of trying to cover up what happened with discount hair accessories. You could acknowledge that your daughter committed a crime. And you could stop trying to make this about Tessa's feelings when the actual victim is a 9-year-old girl who's probably going to need therapy." I can't just abandon Tessa," Gloria said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nobody's asking you to abandon her," I replied. "But you can't expect me to pretend this didn't happen just because it makes your family dynamic uncomfortable. Tessa made her choices, and now she gets to live with the consequences. That's how the real world works, Gloria." She stood there for a long moment, clutching that ridiculous wig and looking like she'd aged about 10 years overnight. Finally, she cleared her throat and tried one more approach. What if she apologized? What if Tessa came here and apologized to Sophie directly? I almost laughed. Almost. "Gloria, your daughter filmed herself traumatizing my kid and then tried to play the victim when I called her on it. You really think an apology is going to fix this?" "It's a start," she said hopefully. I looked at this woman, this person who'd raised the monster that had hurt my daughter, and felt something that might have been pity if it wasn't mixed with so much anger. "You know what, Gloria?" I said finally. "Here's a crazy idea. Instead of coming over here at the crack of dawn with bargain basement wigs, why don't you try being a grandmother who actually protects her granddaughter instead of enabling the person who hurt her?" And with that, I stepped back and closed the door, leaving Gloria standing on my porch with her synthetic peace offering and her deflated hopes for easy forgiveness. You know how they say the internet never forgets? Well, turns out that's especially true when you're stupid enough to film yourself traumatizing a 9-year-old and then leave the evidence floating around in cyberspace like a digital turd that won't flush. By the time I'd finished my second cup of coffee and contemplated the philosophical implications of Gloria's discount wig gambit, Tessa's little home movie had apparently found its way into the wild. I discovered this delightful development around lunchtime, when my phone started buzzing like an angry wasp trapped in a mason jar. Text after text, notification after notification, all variations on the same theme. "Dude, did you see this video? And holy shit, is this your daughter?" And my personal favorite, "Your sister-in-law is trending, and not in a good way." Trending. Jesus Christ on a pogo stick, my family drama was trending. I fired up my laptop. Yeah, I'm old school, deal with it, and did a quick search for "Aunt gives niece haircut." And there it was, in all its horrifying glory. Tessa's masterpiece of child abuse. uploaded to what appeared to be every social media platform known to mankind. The title was Aunt Gives Niece Free Haircut, which, let me tell you, was about as misleading as calling the Titanic boat takes scenic detour. The video had racked up views faster than a Kardashian scandal. We're talking hundreds of thousands of views in less than 12 hours, with more pouring in every minute I watched. But here's the beautiful part. And I mean beautiful in the way that watching your enemies step on rakes is beautiful. The comments section was absolutely eviscerating Tessa. "This is straight-up child abuse," wrote someone with the username Karma as bitch247. "That poor baby. Someone call CPS. Worst than ever," declared mom of 3 boys. "Help. I disown anyone who did this to my kid." But my absolute favorite comment came from someone calling themselves Hairstylist of Doom. As a professional cosmetologist, I can confirm that this woman has no idea what she's doing and should be banned from holding anything sharper than a butter knife. Also, someone needs to tell her that filming your crimes isn't actually a great legal strategy. The internet, in all its chaotic glory, had spoken, and what it had to say about Tessa wasn't exactly flattering. Someone, and I'm pretty sure it was one of those remix artists with too much time and too much talent, had even edited the video to include dramatic violin music, the kind they play during those Sarah McLachlan ASPCA commercials that make you want to adopt 17 sad dogs. Watching my daughter's trauma set to In the Arms of an Angel was surreal in a way that probably required therapy to fully process. But it got better. Oh man, did it get better. Some genius had turned Tessa into a meme. There were pictures of her smug face photoshopped onto the body of Edward Scissorhands, with captions like, "When you volunteer to help with kids' hair day at school." Someone had created a fake movie poster called The Clipper, a horror story, with Tessa's face superimposed over a bloody pair of scissors. My personal favorite was the one that showed her face next to a mugshot template with the caption, "Florida woman commits assault with styling tools, films evidence because she's that smart." Around 2 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Derek, Tessa's husband, also known as the man who'd somehow managed to marry into Crazy and then act surprised when Crazy showed up to dinner every night. "Marcus," he said, and I could hear the desperation in his voice like he was calling from the bottom of a well. "Man, you gotta help us out here. Tessa's getting destroyed online. People are calling her workplace. Her friends are getting harassed. Someone even called her mother's book club. This is getting out of hand." I leaned back in my kitchen chair, watching the view counter on the video tick upward like a slot machine hitting jackpot after jackpot. "Derek, buddy," I said, "I hate to break it to you, but I didn't put that video online. Your wife did that all by herself. I'm just an innocent bystander watching the consequences unfold. But you could ask people to stop sharing it," he pleaded. "You could tell them it was all a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding, right? Like accidentally ordering decaf instead of regular coffee, not like assaulting a child with grooming equipment while filming it for posterity. "Derek," I said, trying to keep my voice patient because honestly, the guy seemed genuinely clueless about what his wife had done. Even if I wanted to stop this, which I couldn't. This is the internet we're talking about. Trying to stop something from going viral is like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube after it's been squeezed out by a gorilla on steroids. "Then what are we supposed to do?" he asked, and I could practically hear him pulling his hair out through the phone. "Well," I said, "you could start by acknowledging that your wife committed a crime against my daughter. You could try apologizing instead of asking me to fix the mess she made. Or, and here's a radical idea, you could accept that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences involve the entire internet thinking you're a terrible person." There was silence on the other end of the line for a long moment. Then Derek said, "I didn't know she was going to actually do it." "Then why did you hand her the clippers?" I asked. "Did you think she was going to trim the hedges?" More silence. Then a click. Derek had hung up on me, which honestly was probably the smartest thing he'd done all week. But the real entertainment was still coming. Around 3 o'clock, Clara came running into the kitchen with her laptop, her eyes wide like she'd just witnessed the second coming of Christ, if Christ had specialized in social media disasters. "Marcus," she said, setting the laptop down on the counter, "you need to see this." She'd pulled up Tessa's social media profiles, all of them. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, even LinkedIn for crying out loud. And they were all getting absolutely demolished. Her Facebook page looked like a war zone, with comment after comment from strangers telling her exactly what they thought of her parenting philosophy. Her Instagram was flooded with people posting pictures of their own kids with captions like, "This is what normal aunts do with their nieces," alongside photos of fun activities that didn't involve assault weapons disguised as grooming tools. But TikTok. Oh man, TikTok was having a field day. Users were creating response videos, some of them reenacting the incident with dolls to show how messed up it was, others offering tutorials on how not to be the worst relative ever. The hashtag Tessa the Clipper was trending, and not in a way that would look good on a resume. "Look at this one," Clara said, clicking on a video from some teenager with purple hair and more piercings than a tackle box. The kid was holding up a pair of toy scissors and addressing the camera directly. "Hey Tessa, if you're watching this, here's a pro tip. Maybe ask permission before you touch someone else's kid. Also, filming your crimes isn't a great look. Just saying." The video had been viewed 2.3 million times. "Jesus," I muttered, watching the numbers climb in real time. "She's not just famous, she's infamous." That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Tessa herself. "Make Marcus delete it." I showed the text to Clara, who just stared at it for a moment before bursting out laughing. Not polite laughter, not nervous giggles, but full-on, belly-shaking laughter that echoed through our kitchen like the sound of justice being served. "She thinks you control the internet," Clara gasped between laughs. "She actually thinks you can just delete something that's been shared by hundreds of thousands of people." I typed back, "Yeah, if I controlled the internet, your face would have been pixelated years ago." Then I turned off my phone, sat back, and watched my sister-in-law's digital reputation burn brighter than a California wildfire in August. And you know what? It was beautiful. You know what they don't tell you about being a parent? They don't mention that sometimes you'll find yourself sitting in a police station on a Sunday afternoon, trying to explain to a cop that yes, your sister-in-law really did assault your kid with grooming equipment while filming it like she was directing the world's most fucked-up documentary. They really should put that in the parenting manual, right between how to assemble a crib without having a mental breakdown and why goldfish crackers will become a food group. Officer Martinez looked like he'd seen everything in his 15 years on the force, but even he raised an eyebrow when I got to the part about Tessa recording the whole thing for her TikTok followers. He was probably in his 40s, built like a guy who'd played football in high school and still hit the gym regularly, with this mustache that looked like it belonged in a cop movie from the 80s. "So let me get this straight," he said, leaning back in his chair and tapping his pen against his notepad. "Your sister-in-law shaved your 9-year-old daughter's head without permission, filmed the entire incident, and then posted it online." "Yep," I said, sliding a printed screenshot of the video across his desk. "And when I objected to this behavior, she played the victim card harder than a politician during campaign season." Officer Martinez picked up the screenshot and studied it for a moment, his expression shifting from professional interest to barely concealed disgust. "Jesus," he muttered under his breath. "What's wrong with people these days?" That's exactly what I'd been wondering myself. When did we reach the point where traumatizing children for social media content became acceptable behavior? When did "it's just a prank, bro" become a valid defense for what was essentially assault? "The thing is," I continued, "this wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. She brought the clippers with her. She set up her phone to record. This was premeditated, Officer Martinez. She planned this whole thing." The cop nodded grimly and started writing. "Any witnesses to the incident itself?" "Well, my daughter was there, obviously. And half the family heard the aftermath when I carried Sophie downstairs looking like she'd gone 10 rounds with a lawnmower." "What about the sister-in-law's reaction when you confronted her?" I shifted in my chair, suddenly feeling like I was the one being investigated. I may have expressed my displeasure. "How so?" I slapped her. Officer Martinez stopped writing and looked up at me. For a moment, I thought I was about to get read my rights alongside my sister-in-law. Then he nodded slightly. "Can't say I blame you," he said quietly. "If someone did that to my kid." He trailed off and went back to his report. "But for the record, I'm not supposed to say that." "Understood." The whole process took about 2 hours. Statements, photographs of Sophie's head, which broke my heart all over again. Copies of the viral video, because apparently the internet was now evidence in a criminal case, and enough paperwork to deforest a small country. By the time we left the station, I felt like I'd been through a bureaucratic wood chipper, but at least it was official. Tessa was going to face consequences for what she'd done. The next stop was Dr. Monroe's office. If you've never had to take your traumatized child to see a therapist, let me tell you, it's about as much fun as a root canal performed by a drunk dentist with anger management issues. The waiting room was decorated in that aggressively cheerful way that screams, "We're trying really hard to make this not seem scary," with cartoon animals on the walls and toys that looked like they'd been sanitized with nuclear waste. Dr. Monroe turned out to be this soft-spoken woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the sort of calming presence that probably came from years of dealing with other people's family disasters. She had gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and wore these funky glasses that somehow managed to look both professional and approachable. "Sophie," she said after we'd been introduced and settled into her office, which was decorated with more stuffed animals than a toy store and smelled like vanilla candles. "Your dad tells me that something scary happened to you recently." Sophie nodded, her hand instinctively going to her bald head. She'd been doing that a lot since yesterday, touching her scalp like she couldn't quite believe her hair was gone, like maybe if she checked enough times it would magically grow back. "Can you tell me what happened?" Dr. Monroe asked gently. And so Sophie told her story, haltingly at first, then with growing confidence as she realized Dr. Monroe wasn't going to judge her or tell her she was overreacting. She talked about how excited she'd been about the family dinner, how proud she'd been of her braids, how scared she'd felt when Tessa started cutting without asking permission. "I kept telling her to stop," Sophie said, her voice getting smaller. But she just kept cutting, and she was laughing like it was funny. And everyone could see me through her phone. Dr. Monroe nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds very frightening. And very unfair. Adults are supposed to ask permission before they touch children, especially in ways that might change how they look." "That's what I thought too," Sophie said, looking relieved that someone finally understood. "But Aunt Tessa said I was being dramatic." "You weren't being dramatic," Dr. Monroe said firmly. "You were having a normal reaction to someone doing something to your body without your permission. That's never okay, no matter who does it." By the end of the session, Sophie was sitting up straighter, and some of the haunted look had left her eyes. Dr. Monroe had this way of making everything seem manageable, like trauma was just another problem that could be solved with the right tools and enough time. "I want to see you again next week," Dr. Monroe told Sophie as we prepared to leave. "But I want you to know something important. What happened to you wasn't your fault, and you're very brave for talking about it." Sophie beamed at that, the first real smile I'd seen from her since the barbershop massacre. Really. In fact, you're one of the bravest kids I've ever met." On the way home, Sophie was quiet for a while, processing everything that had happened. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "Daddy, I want to wear hats to school tomorrow." My heart clenched. "Okay, sweetheart, we can do that. Will the other kids make fun of me?" I pulled into our driveway and turned to look at her. "Some might. But you know what? Anyone who makes fun of someone who's been hurt isn't worth worrying about. The kids who matter will understand." That evening, we made a trip to Target that probably violated several local noise ordinances due to Sophie's shrieks of delight. I bought her 10 different hats, baseball caps, beanies, a cowboy hat that made her look like a tiny sheriff, and yes, even one shaped like a pizza slice because life's too short for boring headwear. She tried on each one in front of the mirror in our hallway, posing like she was modeling for a magazine. "How do I look, Daddy?" "Like a trendsetter," I told her, and I meant it. "You're going to start a whole new fashion movement at school." Sophie giggled, for the first time since the incident. "Maybe I'll be famous for good reasons instead of because Aunt Tessa is crazy." "You're already famous for good reasons, kiddo. You're brave, you're smart, and you've got the best hat collection in the 4th grade. Later that night, after Sophie had gone to bed wearing her new pizza hat, because why not, Clara finally worked up the courage to have the conversation we'd both been avoiding. "I'm sorry," she said, sitting down next to me on the couch. "I should have protected her better. I should have seen what Tessa was capable of." "Clara, no, let me finish. My family has always been complicated, but I thought I could manage it, keep everyone happy, make it work somehow. I didn't realize that trying to keep the peace was actually enabling them to hurt our daughter." I put my arm around her, pulling her close. "You're not responsible for Tessa being a psychopath, but I am responsible for putting Sophie in that situation, for not setting boundaries, for caring more about family harmony than family safety. So what do we do now? I asked. Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made me fall in love with her all over again. Now we protect our daughter. Whatever it takes. Even if it means cutting ties with people who share our DNA. And that's when I knew we were going to be okay. Not just okay. We were going to be better than okay. Because sometimes the best thing you can do for your family is to redefine what family means. You know what's fascinating about family dynamics? They're like a house of cards built on a foundation of denial and held together with passive-aggressive comments and guilt trips. And when one card finally falls, say, when someone commits assault with grooming equipment while filming it for social media fame, the whole damn structure comes tumbling down faster than a politician's approval ratings during a scandal. The fallout from our police report hit Clara's family like a Category 5 hurricane made of consequences and reality checks. By Tuesday morning, my phone was ringing off the hook with various relatives calling to discuss the situation, which is family speak for convince you to make this problem go away so we can all pretend it never happened. The first call came from Thomas, Clara's father, who had apparently been elected as the family's official ambassador to the land of common sense. Thomas was one of those guys who'd perfected the art of fence-sitting to an Olympic level. He could straddle any controversial topic with the grace of a gymnast and the commitment of a weather vane in a tornado. Marcus, son, he began, his voice carrying that careful tone people use when they're trying to defuse a bomb while blindfolded. Gloria and I have been talking, and we think maybe we can work something out here. You know, find a solution that works for everyone. A solution? I said, settling into my kitchen chair with my morning coffee. Thomas, your daughter committed a crime against my kid. The solution is called the criminal justice system, and it's already in motion. Now, let's not be hasty. Thomas continued, apparently operating under the delusion that felony assault was just a minor family disagreement that could be solved with a group hug and a casserole. Family should stick together through thick and thin. Tessa made a mistake, sure, but she's learned her lesson. She feels terrible about what happened. She feels terrible that she got caught. I corrected. There's a difference. If she actually felt terrible about traumatizing Sophie, she wouldn't have posted the video online in the first place. There was a long pause, during which I could practically hear Thomas's brain trying to process the concept of consequences. But pressing charges will ruin Tessa's life, he finally said, playing the sympathy card like it was a get-out-of-jail-free token. You know what ruined my daughter's life? Getting assaulted by someone she trusted while half the internet watched. But hey, let's definitely worry about Tessa's feelings here. Thomas tried a different approach. What if we made it worth your while to drop this? Gloria has some money saved up, and we could. Thomas, I interrupted. Are you seriously trying to bribe me to let child abuse slide? It's not a bribe, he protested, though his voice had that defensive edge that people get when they know they're full of shit. It's compensation for Sophie's emotional distress. I had to laugh. I actually had to put down my coffee and laugh for a solid 30 seconds, because the idea of Thomas trying to put a dollar amount on my daughter's trauma was so absurd it qualified as performance art. Let me get this straight, I said when I finally caught my breath. You want to pay me hush money so your daughter doesn't face consequences for assaulting my kid? When you put it like that, it sounds bad. Thomas, it sounds bad because it is bad. The answer is no. Hell no. Not if you offered me Jeff Bezos's bank account now. He hung up after that, probably to report back to Gloria that Operation Bribery had failed spectacularly. The next call came from Gloria herself, about an hour later. She'd apparently decided to try the full-scale guilt offensive, complete with manipulative tactics that would have made a used car salesman proud. Marcus, she began, her voice dripping with more fake emotion than a soap opera death scene. You're tearing this family apart. Is that really what you want? To destroy relationships that have taken decades to build? Gloria, I said, I didn't tear anything apart. Tessa did that when she decided to use my daughter's head as her personal art project. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. But she's family, Gloria wailed, apparently believing that shared DNA was some kind of magical shield against accountability. Family forgives family. That's what we do. You know what else family does? I asked. Family protects the children. Family doesn't hand someone clippers and then act shocked when they use them inappropriately. I didn't know she was going to. Bullshit, I said, feeling my patience evaporate faster than water in the desert. Everyone in that room knew exactly what Tessa was capable of. You've all been enabling her crazy behavior for years, and now you're surprised that she escalated? That's like being shocked that a fire burns when you keep throwing gasoline on it. Gloria tried the nuclear option, threatening to cut contact with Clara and Sophie. "If you go through with this," she said, her voice turning cold, "you'll never see us again. Sophie will grow up without her grandmother. Clara will lose her family. Is your pride worth that?" "My pride," I repeated, genuinely amazed by her ability to twist reality. "Gloria, this isn't about my pride. This is about protecting my daughter from people who think traumatizing children is acceptable entertainment. If losing contact with you is the price of keeping Sophie safe, then that's a bargain I'll take every day of the week and twice on Sunday." She hung up on me too, which seemed to be becoming a family tradition. But the real entertainment came that afternoon, when Aunt Rita called with what she described as the family perspective. Rita had always been the unofficial family gossip coordinator, the person who somehow knew everyone's business before they knew it themselves. "Marcus, honey," she began, "I want you to know that not everyone agrees with Gloria and Thomas. Some of us think you're doing the right thing." "Some of us?" I asked. "Well, me and Tony, for starters. And Beth thinks Tessa got what she deserved. Even Cousin Rick said he would have done worse than slap her if it was his kid." "But," I prompted, because there's always a but in these conversations. "But most of the family wants to stay neutral. They don't want to take sides." "Neutral," I repeated. "Rita, when someone assaults a child, there is no neutral. There's right, and there's wrong. There's protecting kids, and there's enabling abusers. That's it." I know," Rita sighed. "But you know how families are. Everyone's afraid of making waves." "Well, here's a message for all the neutral parties," I said. "If they want to stay Switzerland in this situation, they can Venmo Sophie's therapy bills. That way they can feel good about not taking sides while actually contributing something useful." Rita actually chuckled at that. "You know, I might just suggest that at the next family gathering." "What family gathering?" I asked. "I thought we were banned from those." "Oh, honey, there's not going to be a next family gathering. At least not one that includes everyone. This whole thing has split the family right down the middle. Half the people think you overreacted, and the other half think Tessa should be in jail. And you know what? Good. If standing up for my daughter meant splitting the family, then consider it split. Some fractures are necessary. Some relationships aren't worth preserving if they come at the cost of your child's safety and well-being." The final call of the day came from Clara's cousin Beth, who had apparently appointed herself as the voice of reason in this circus of dysfunction. "Marcus," she said, "I just wanted to tell you that what you're doing is right. Tessa has been getting away with crazy behavior for years because everyone was too afraid to call her out. Maybe this will finally wake her up." "Thanks, Beth," I said, genuinely grateful to hear from someone who wasn't trying to manipulate me or make excuses for inexcusable behavior. "Also," she added, "I wanted you to know that if you need character witnesses for the court case, Tony and I are willing to testify about Tessa's history of boundary issues." "History? Oh boy, where do I start? Remember when she cut off all of Emma's Barbie doll hair at Christmas 3 years ago? Or when she reorganized my purse at Thanksgiving and threw away my prescription medication because she thought the bottles were cluttering? This isn't new behavior, Marcus. This is just the first time someone said no to her. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't about one bad decision or one moment of poor judgment. This was about years of escalating behavior that the family had normalized and enabled, creating a monster who thought she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. Well, congratulations, family. Your monster just met the real world, and the real world had handcuffs. 6 months later, I'm standing in our kitchen making pancakes while Sophie regales her best friend Emma with tales of her awesome short haircut adventure. Yeah, that's what she calls it now, an adventure. Kids are resilient in ways that would make Navy SEALs jealous. Her hair's grown back into this adorable pixie cut that makes her look like a miniature superhero. Better yet, she owns it. When some kid at school asked what happened to her hair, Sophie looked them dead in the eye and said, "Even if someone's family, they can't hurt you without consequences." My dad taught me that. I've never been prouder of anything in my entire life. The school presentation she gave about personal boundaries became legendary. Half the parents in town now use Sophie as an example when talking to their kids about body autonomy. My daughter accidentally became a 9-year-old activist, and she's loving every minute of it. Tessa, court-ordered therapy, community service, and a criminal record that makes job hunting about as successful as a screen door on a submarine. Her social media accounts are still getting roasted daily because the internet truly never forgets. Derek finally grew a spine and divorced her, taking their kids somewhere far away from the crazy. Good for him. Gloria still sends birthday cards that go straight into the trash. Thomas occasionally texts Clara, mostly to apologize and ask if we need anything. We don't, but I respect the effort. The real family now consists of Aunt Rita and Uncle Tony, who've become Sophie's unofficial godparents. They show up every weekend with terrible dad jokes and good food, proving that family isn't about DNA. It's about who shows up when it matters. Last week, Rita brought her famous lasagna, and Tony taught Sophie how to change a tire, because every girl should know how to handle her own business. Sophie nodded seriously, wearing her pizza slice hat like it was formal attire. Clara's happier than I've seen her in years. Turns out, cutting toxic people out of your life is like removing a splinter. It hurts for a minute, then everything works better. So what's the moral of this story? Sophie asked me yesterday, grinning gap-toothed while wearing her cowboy hat. Simple, kiddo. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who doesn't shave your kid bald for likes. She laughed, Clara rolled her eyes, and I sipped my beer, saluting the universe for finally teaching us all what we should have known from the beginning. Sometimes the best way to protect your family is to redefine what family means. Next family party? We're hosting, and barber clippers are definitely not allowed.